Hey, what is going on, guys? This is the SS Ultimate Goku, back with another video, and today I am going to be reviewing the first episode of the Avatar: The Last Airbender live-action series. We reviewed the entirety of the first season last season. I'm going to try to watch every episode and review them and do whenever I can upload them, because obviously they're all uploaded right away. So yeah, this is the first episode I'm going to review. I just got done watching it. It was somewhere. The episode title was called Somewhere Safe. And obviously there was a lot of interesting points here for the new season compared to the last season. So one of the things in the last season, because I reviewed 2 episodes. I'm not going to probably do that this year per video because of the challengings of it, as well as surprisingly there's only 7 episodes this season, so we're gypped out of 1 extra episode because the last season was 8 episodes. So I don't know why Netflix made that decision. But anyways, so this episode, it kind of starts off in a weird state. They start off with, basically, if you remember the fighters or the air glider team that took over the temple, and they explored this in the last season, that the Fire Nation invaded them. And they're forced to make tools for them. They eventually get away from that, which they explored that in season 1. Again, one of the biggest, I think, criticisms of the first season is they kind of sprung along plot points from things that weren't supposed to happen until later on, and they exploited them in season 1, and in this episode they kind of do that as well. So that is a trend that we're seeing with the Netflix series that is just going to be something that they're going to do. Now, I don't necessarily have an issue with that per se, as long as it makes sense and it still flows right. It's still a little too early for me to kind of really get into that specifics, because I haven't watched all the other episodes yet. But I will say, when they start reuniting the gang, right, they basically find out that Amashu has been taken over by the Fire Nation, right? So they basically skipped soldiers like or they skipped the soldiers who were trying to recruit Aang to defeat the Fire Lord early. They skipped that plot point. There's so many plot points they skipped early on in season 2, and just went right into the fact that right when the episode starts up, that Amashu has been taken over. Like, they go right into that. And then they talk about Ba Sing Se already, which, we didn't find out about Ba Sing Se until like halfway through book 2, right? They talk about the Serpent's Pass, how they want to get the refugees to the Serpent's Pass, which, again, this is something that doesn't happen later on. As a matter of fact, Toph Beifong was already introduced when this happened, but obviously they're doing it in the first episode, which means Toph is not there, because they have not gotten contact with Toph. So there are so many things that they're missing. I mean, hopefully they do the swamp tree, because don't tell me if they did, if you guys watched it already, because I plan on reviewing these episodes individually after I watch them. So but anyways. So, that's missing. As a matter of fact, I don't think they even did the pregnant lady. Like, because the whole reason why they did the the whole reason why they did the refugee thing to accompany the refugees to Ba Sing Se was because they were rejected getting into Ba Sing Se, even though they had the paperwork for it. And then that was what led them to, get them across the Serpent's Past. And, the pregnant lady doesn't exist in this continuity, apparently. So there was that. They explored that whole thing. So while that's going on, another key thing that they did is Zuko and Uncle Iroh are basically now, they're basically, they don't have the ship anymore and stuff like that. They don't have their men anymore, even though, and if you've watched my live action Avatar reviews from the last season, one of my favorite things that this series did was that they basically said that the soldiers that were accompanying Prince Zuko while he was banished were basically the soldiers that were supposed to be on the mission that would have taken them all out when Zuko spoke out of turn against that. Basically, the Fire Lord basically had those soldiers were the ones who accompanied Zuko. They're gone. I'm assuming that they just died, I guess. Or they just left them because they viewed, because they do talk about that. They said that Zuko was a traitor for turning on Commander Zhao, or whatever. But again, not really exploring a lot of this. They're kind of just jumping into things. So that does worry me, because in the first season they were very cautious on doing stuff like that. Even though they were skipping things, they were very cautious in how they were writing and explaining it to the viewers. This one, in this first episode, they feel like they're kind of like just rushing things and like kind of like, hey, okay, here we go, next thing. So I am kind of worried about the remaining of the season because I feel like the tone is very different from the first season. So a major change that I didn't like in this season was, so we see Princess Azula in this episode. We see Princess Azula basically talking about her mission on how to conquer Ba Sing Se, right? Which is fine, with whatever, she does that in the series. She talks about this, and then Fire Lord Ozai is like, okay, yeah, I'm going to have this general do it. And then that general talks to Azula and says, that he's honored to, do this mission for her and whatnot. This leads to, or actually before that actually even happens, after they all leave, Fire Lord Ozai basically talks to Azula that he wants to bring Prince Zuko back. He wants to pardon him because Azula thinks he's dead, but Fire Lord Ozai knows he's still alive. I guess he has some spies spying on him, but that's never really explained. But so he wants to pardon him, and this is a major change because from the original series, it was explained that Azula does try to get Zuko to come back to the Fire Nation, but that was just a trick to get him back and have him be a prisoner. That's what the Fire Lord really wanted to do in the original animated cartoon series. Okay? So they changed this and are now like, oh, well, now the Fire Lord wants Azula to get him back because, he wants to pardon him and wants the family back together or whatever now all of a sudden, which kind of really diminishes Fire Lord Ozai as a villain because, this is supposed to be a ruthless Fire Lord. Okay, and the fact that he's having sympathy now for Zuko, I don't like that. I don't like that change. I think that was a very, very bad change by Netflix. So yeah, there was that. That was a big change that I didn't like. I'd like to know what other people think about that because I really hated that change. I really hated that change that they did. So we see them going in the Serpent's Pass, and this was done very well. I thought this was probably the best pacing and exploring the animation of, or not the animation, I'm sorry, the CGI of what they were doing with the elements and stuff like that. Pushing the water out, for the refugees. I thought that was very, very well done. And the whole thing with the serpent, where Aang actually tries to drag him away from from where the refugees are, but then he may have accidentally killed it. And then we see Aang just like tearing up because he didn't mean to do that. Because, he doesn't, want to take a life and stuff like that. We see that. And then we see the struggle where, because early in the episode, Aang didn't want to learn healing. Because there was the opening scene with Fire Lord people trying to, take down the gliding team. For them betraying the Fire Nation. And we see this part where one of them gets hit. And, Katara ends up healing him, but Katara wanted Aang to try and heal him because, he has to learn how to heal. Now, this is something interesting in itself because he does learn how to heal. He heals up the serpent with Katara. But one of the things that's really interesting here is, and this is something that I had to think for a second because I'm thinking like, wait a minute. Aang never learned how to heal, like in the original, at least not on screen. Okay, this was never something that was explored. Okay, Katara did this a lot, but Aang never really learned how to heal. As a matter of fact, I mean, when we get to the end of the series, there was still stuff that he was learning on how to waterbend. Okay, in the original series. So them really trying to force on Aang healing, I thought was really interesting because, and I'm not saying that Aang didn't eventually learn how to heal, but that was not something that was really focused on in the original series. The sub-elements was not something that they really focused on with Aang. He never learned metal bending, all right? I don't even think he learned sand bending. At least on screen, he never did. The sub-elements, he never, I mean, obviously he learned how to ice bend, which is technically, that's a sub-element as well, but he never really, most of the sub-elements, from water, earth, air, and fire, he never really learned. So I'm really wondering why Netflix really focused on him learning how to heal, because that was really the theme of Aang in this episode was, his struggle to learn how to heal bend, in this episode. And that was something that I really was like, wait, why are they focusing on this? Why are they focused on heel bending here? Because, obviously later on in the series, we know in the cartoon, Aang accidentally burns Katara when he tries to learn how to firebend, right? And he was reckless with it. But if you remember, Aang never was able to heal Katara. I mean, if that was the case, Aang could have healed Katara, healed Katara the moment she burned him. But he didn't because he didn't know how to heal. So why was it that in this series, that like in the first episode of season 2 of this live action series, why is the focus about him learning how to heal bend? Okay, I mean, I know in the opening episode, in the opening scene, like when Aang, is doing the water bending in the wrong stance, and Katara has to adjust it, and then he's able to hit the soldier correctly instead of splashing water at him. That made sense. It was also kind of funny too, but the heel bending thing didn't make sense at all because again, Aang never learned how to heel bend. And I was thinking, like, why is this a focus? Why is this the focus? For Aang, I didn't get it, and I still don't get it. To why they were focusing on heel bending. Again, I'm not saying that Aang didn't eventually learn how to heel bend in the Avatar series, maybe off screen, but that was never a focus. That was never a focus in the cartoon series. So why was it a focus in the live action series? Because it was not something he did, and it's not something he learned during the series. Okay? So that was a problem. The biggest thing that happened in the series that I can say that they did, that I'm sure a lot of the fans were pleased by, was the focus of the little tease of the romance. Now, I was on here telling you guys for a long time that they were going to eventually explore romance because people were concerned, the shippers were concerned about, they're going to change the shipping and whatnots. They didn't do that at all. They were subtle, but they were there. Kyoshi and Sokka's was actually more noticeable than subtle. Zuki basically saying that she wanted to actually be together with him, and then, Sokka kind of just tries to find Aang. And then later on, at the end of the episode, we see them holding hands. So there's that. Excuse me. But right before the episode ended, we saw Aang go up to Katara, while the fire was going on, right? And Aang was about to say something, and then was like, "Oh, it's nothing," and then walked away. That right there is all you need to know. Aang and Katara are going to be a thing in the live action series. That was a subtle. And they did that on purpose because that's how Aang and Katara were in the series. It was subtle. We didn't really see them really get together until season 3. That was when they were really started getting together. But, obviously season 1 we saw stuff briefly, subtle stuff, which they didn't do in the live action series because obviously the actors were too young for that. But in this, in season 2, they're doing it. They're doing the subtle. And to me, they're doing it the right way. For Aang Katara canon wise, and for them. The actors are kids, so it's live action, guys. But I told people about that. I said that was the approach they were gonna do, and they're doing it. So if you like that, they're doing it. They're doing those subtle things. They're letting you know that yes, we know it's gonna happen. Okay. One more thing about Azula. She also did this thing with Ty Lee and May, where she gave them like 10 seconds to eliminate one another. and you know, they really were going to kill each other, but Azula stops them because she just wanted to test them, basically. Azula basically says that, we're going to go find Zuko, but in reality, we're going to go try to find the Avatar. So she believes that Zuko is going after Aang because that's what he was, he was originally tasked to do when being banished. So even though Azula says that he believes that Zuko's dead, she believes that if he's alive, that's what he's going to go after. So instead of actually trying to capture him, she's going to just basically track him down and follow him because he knows that he's going after the Avatar instead. So a little subtle difference, obviously in the original series, they were chasing after Zuko because they wanted to put him in prison in the Fire Nation. Now it's because, the Fire Lord now wants him back because he's got cold feet now all of a sudden. The beginning of the episode also, I did not mention that, they did explore the whole thing with King Boomy. Aang was about to free him, but he didn't want to be freed. And they, very similar to how it was in the canon, only difference is he was actually in like a coffin thing or whatever. And here he was in actual prison. So there's that. They show the Sozin Comet thing. They don't give an actual date on when Sozin Comet is going to be. They say it could be a couple months, it could be a year, which I said they had to do for the live action series. I said they couldn't do, by summer's end because that was one of obviously that was the thing in the original anime series was that they decided to stop the Fire Nation before Sozin's Comet before summer's end. They completely got rid of that in this, which again made sense because these characters are aging up, and that gives you the excuse for the characters to look older. Even though I don't think they were specifying how much time had passed from the time of the end of the first season to this season, but they can still basically do a time skip for the next season because they just basically said that Sozin Comet isn't happening at summer's end. So there's that. I agree with that decision. Zuko again, still mad at Uncle Iroh, because he doesn't like what they're doing and hiding. They explored a whole thing about, this is all your fault because, if you would have conquered Ba Sing Se, you would have been the Fire Lord. And they talk about his son and stuff like that. It's really a pretty good emotional moment. The other, almost forgot about the last element that they actually skipped through. So the Painted Lady plot. They talked about the Painted Lady in this, the one lady that was, I believe, one of the refugees. She talks about the Painted Lady and how she shows up for the elements. She's looking at like a flower or whatever. So she talks about the Painted Lady and how she helps the people in the water and stuff like that. But again, the Painted Lady thing happens in season 3, and it's supposed to be a Fire Nation thing. It's not supposed to be a Earth Kingdom thing. So that really concerns me because that could be yet another thing that they're bringing up that could have been used later on, but choosing to use it now. It's very similar to the Tunnel of Lovers. The Tunnel of Lovers was changed to, a sibling thing. And obviously it was done in the first season, even though it was done in the second season. It seems like they're going to do the same thing with the Painted Lady plot. It's supposed to happen in season 3, but apparently it's going to happen in, season 2. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what happens in the episode. They still have to find earthbending teacher for Aang. They had to split up from the refugees because of the Sozin Comet thing. So Kyoshi is going to have to take them themselves there, because now they're going to have to go separate because of because of the whole Sozin Comet thing. So yeah. That is the episode, and I was kind of out of order in how everything happened, but you get the jive of it. Again, overall, mixed feelings about this episode. A lot of things were kind of stretched on way too quickly. They didn't really slow things down like in the first season. Even when they were skipping plot points, the pacing was a lot better in the first season. At least for this episode felt very, very rushed. And again, some of the things that were put into this episode didn't make sense. The positive things that I liked about this episode was obviously, creating the, love interest that everybody wanted. Subtle, but there. For Kyoshi and Sokka Zuki and Sokka and Aang and Katara. There was also I should mention, speaking of that, Zuki actually offered Katara to be a Kyoshi warrior, which that never happened in the original series, by the way. So I'm wondering where that's going to lead to. But yeah, guys, let me know what you guys think of this episode. What did you like about it? What did you didn't like about it? My personal thing with this episode, as I was watching all of them, my personal thing I liked about this episode was exploring the subtle romances, not doing everything so rushed, but keeping it there. Obviously, keep the fans happy for that sense that are okay with this stuff. In terms of my favorite specific plot point, I liked the Serpent Pass CGI. I liked how they did that and handled that specifically. I didn't like that it was in this episode, because this episode shouldn't have had it, because it's not supposed to happen until later. But I did like that. I liked the battle they did with the serpent. Those were kind of my favorite things about this episode. Specifically, and how they explored that. But a lot of the other things I'm really questioning. The healing element doesn't make sense. Changing some key plot points to Azula, the Fire Lord's motivation, I think wasn't that great, and hopefully there's actually a good reason for this, because otherwise we're gonna have lots of problems for the rest of the season. But nonetheless, that is it. Make sure you comment, rate, subscribe, hit that bell for all these contents. Thank you. And that's about it, guys. I am the SS Ultimate Goku, and I'm out of here. Peace.